My name is Rafael, you're watching Rock and Roll Garage, and today I'm going to tell you the story of how Ringo Starr learned to play the drums. But first, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Well, it's a really interesting story, and Ringo is one of the most influential drummers of all time. He was a really fundamental part of the Beatles, and every famous and respected drummer who talks about him says he played things in a very unorthodox way. He was really a unique player, and he played what the song needed. That's what makes him special. And the story about how he learned to play the drums is just, crazy. He never had no formal training like most of the artists from the 60s and 50s and etc. And this is what he said in an interview with Rolling Stone back in 2019 when he was interviewed by Dave Grohl, the Foo Fighters frontman. This is a story told by Ringo Starr himself. In Liverpool, because we were all teenagers then, I did anything not to go in the army. So to save myself from that, I ended up in the railways. Then I got a job in this factory. My first band was in the factory with the guy who lived next door to me, Eddie Clayton, who was just a really cool guitar player. And I always wanted to be a drummer since I was 13, and my friend Roy Trafford made a T-chest bass, a T-chest with a stick and a string, and that's what skiffle was. No, I never had a formal training, and we would play in the basement for the men at lunchtime. And if you ever played a factory, that will make you grow up. It's get off. There's no very nice boys. Yeah, that's how I started. And then we introduced a few more people to the band. And then I moved to Rory, Storm, and the Hurricanes, which was out and out rock. And that was a great time for me, and it was a big band in Liverpool in 1960. We got a job for 3 months in a holiday camp. I left the factory, and the whole family had a meeting to try and convince me that drums are okay as a hobby, son. So this is what he said about it, and he was asked by David Grohl to mention some of his favorite drummers at the time, and these are the ones. He said, well, Cozy Cole is the only one I ever mentioned, but anything Little Richard did, people always feel it's weird, but I never listened just for the drums. I listened for the whole track. Another drummer I heard at the time had a section going where the hi-hat was part of the fill. First time I ever heard it. So this is a small story about how Ringo learned to play the drums. He taught himself. He started to learn how to play the drums effectively in this factory band he had playing at lunchtime for his co-workers, and then he eventually became a professional musician, and thank God the Beatles invited him to be part of the band, and he was a fundamental part that glued all together George, Paul, and John compositions, and he was just a fundamental part of the Beatles. And I think it's really interesting to see how most musicians learn to play these instruments by themselves. They really are, it feels like they're born with that talent. It's not something they develop, they learn and they discover they had that talent, they wanted to play the instrument, and they naturally gonna have an ability to it. And I think that's the coolest thing, because obviously nowadays you got the internet, you got YouTube, you got all sorts of stuff that can help you to learn how to play the guitar or the drums. But back in the 60s, man, you had nothing. You could buy some books, but or take some very expensive lessons, but most of these people learned how to play songs by guessing and just by hearing and trying to reproduce what was being played in the records or on the radio. So I think it's just mind-blowing, how difficult it was to become a professional musician back then, to become a really good drummer, a really good guitarist, a really good singer back then. And I think that's probably what made them be so great, because nowadays musicians can learn you know, from many other sources, but they learn probably faster, and they don't have this experience time like Ringo had playing in the factory and then in bars and clubs, and then to really record something, to really compose and write songs and etc. So it felt like these artists, when they, you know, had the chance to get a record deal and they had the chance to finally record something in the studio, they already were really good and they knew exactly what to play. So, you know, I think that's something that probably changed the quality of rock and roll music through the decades, I believe, you know, or it changed the way people write songs and etc. and become musicians. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. If you want to read more, go to the description and visit the article I wrote about it. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and leave your comment. Thank you for watching, and I see you later.